Zed Saeed spent decades in the film and television industries, first in New York and then in Hollywood, where he worked on hit TV shows and big-budget movies, pioneering the film industry's transition to digital editing. Family has now brought him to Louisville, where he's pursuing his master's at the U of L Height Art Institute and has completed a photography project, making portraits of recently settled immigrants and refugees in our area. I sat down with Saeed to discuss where his love of photography began and how his career has come full circle, from analog to digital and back again. So, your interest in photography was first sparked by your father's Life magazine collection.
That's right.
And then you solidified that at Hampshire College in Massachusetts. Tell me about how your love for photography evolved.
I was born in Pakistan. I grew up there, and my earliest memories are of my father, who was an amateur photographer. He had a regular day-to-day civil servant job, but he loved photography. And he had this incredible Leica camera that he used to use. And my earliest memories are looking through his Life magazine collection. And I think, if anything else, that was more than anything else my introduction to photography. Eventually, when I was about 17, turning on 18, I came to America. I went to a small liberal arts college in Western Massachusetts, and they turned out to have an incredible film and photography program. So I studied film and photography at Hampshire.
So were you intending to do that with your life before, or did that just kind of work itself out when you got your education and were exposed to that more in college?
I came to America primarily to get a good education. And at the time that I did, computer science was a big thing. It was a new emerging field, and I was very interested in it. And I had that in the back of my mind to study computer science. But when I got into Hampshire and discovered their incredible film and photography program, it was immediate. The love was immediate. I didn't actually leave computer science behind, because what I ended up doing in my career was combining computers and film and photography.
After graduating, he used his education in both film and computer science to help pioneer Hollywood's transition from editing on celluloid film to digital editing, which is now the standard. His expertise landed in work on the hit TV show Scrubs, as well as a role alongside renowned film editor Walter Murch, who was taking a new digital approach to the Academy Award-winning film Cold Mountain.
In Los Angeles, I worked on hundreds of movies and hundreds of TV shows, very actively. And Cold Mountain was one of the many features we did. And it was an incredible experience. I mean, I was working with some of the most well-regarded people. For example, the editor on Cold Mountain was an incredible person named Walter Murch. And Walter Murch is considered the god of editing and the god of sound mixing. He's won Oscars for his work on Godfather and his work on Apocalypse Now and his work on The English Patient. He's one of those incredible, multi-talented, and at the same time, a deeply philosophical person. To sit next to Walter Murch and talk to him about the philosophy of film and life and everything is quite the experience. And to work side by side with that person was quite the incredible experience on that film.
What was it like? What did you learn from him? What was the takeaway from the experience of working with someone who's done that kind of stuff and really mastered his craft?
Walter Murch is a rare example, and he is one of those people that is the closest thing that the film industry has to a philosopher. There's a number of books about Walter Murch. He's also written about it. He's also written about editing. And if you read his book about editing, which is actually standard text in most film schools, I think it's called In the Blink of an Eye, there's almost no discussion of technical matter. There's almost nothing about that. It's all philosophy. It's all about philosophy of filmmaking and philosophy of editing and what an edit means and how you, it's an amazing thing to read that book. And to work with him and watch him work was an incredibly enlightening experience. I mean, just being around him is like an amazing experience.
A thinker above all else.
He really is, he represents kind of my goal, which is in life, which is to be an artist, but above all of that, be a thinker.
Saeed and his wife relocated to Louisville a few years ago to be closer to family. After over a decade in the film business, the move allowed Saeed the opportunity to finally pursue his master's, which he's now doing at U of L's Height Art Institute. In his first class at U of L, he encountered the large format 8x10 camera, a camera that is now at the center of his work.
It's an old style camera. There's no electronic parts in there. There's no autofocus, nothing. You have to handle everything yourself. It's got these bellows. The way you focus the camera is you move it on this thing back and forth.
Like an accordion.
Like an accordion, literally. On the back of this is a ground glass screen. I can turn it around a little bit if that helps. And this screen is what you see your image on.
Okay.
And this is your ground glass screen that you see the image on. It's very dim. The image appears very dim. It appears upside down and flipped. So you have to. It's quite the art to just compose a shot. And this is why you see.
This is the ultimate analog camera, the kind Ansel Adams lugged out west. Saeed has to manually adjust every component of the camera and uses math equations to determine those adjustments based on the available light. A far cry from his time on the digital frontier. The time required for each photograph does have a benefit, though. It allows Saeed to get to know his subjects, an intimacy that comes through on film.
I got to know every one of the people that I photographed really well, because the nature of the large format camera is that you can't rush it. It's not a shoot and run type thing. You really have to engage with the person. It's a very large negative. It's got high fidelity. It's got high resolution. You really pick up, if the person is uncomfortable in front of the camera, it will come through. The way I describe large format camera is that it captures your emotions.
So how did you set these up? Describe to me the way that you got, because it almost looks like you took a photo and then in post-production just put them in front of a white blank. But this is what we're looking at is what you took.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. All these prints were done in the darkroom. So these are not digital prints. They were not scanned into anything and digitally enhanced or cleaned. I literally was in the parking lot of the Catholic Charities, Migration Refugee Services, and against their brick wall in the parking lot, I laid down my big white backdrop and then put them far away from the white backdrop enough so they don't cast a shadow, which is why they look so unreal that it's been edited, but it's not. And then place my camera, and it's just an open shade. The sun is behind the building, casting a light into the parking lot, which is what's lighting them. There's no lights being used. There's no whiteboards or bounce boards or anything like being used. It's just nothing but God's light coming right at them. And that's what it is. And the rest of the magic that you see is really the camera and the film giving you this incredible amounts of detail. My goal with this project, and the way I chose the white and eliminate the background and no mats to the frame and no borders, my goal really was that when people stand in front of these images, I want them to feel like this is a window through which these people are going to fall out at you, or you're going to fall into the window at them. There is absolutely...
As close to seeing them in person as you could get.
That's what you really can do. I mean, there's no affectations. There's no softness. There's no collages. There's nothing. It's just, there's not even another person. I make sure to have each person be an individual. So when you come and stand in front of them, you really are with that person and that person. Because even if you think about it, how many of us are going to actually meet 20 refugees from 20 different parts of the world? Some of us, if you work in that area or know that, probably, but this is a rare experience. You won't really get to see that.
So every one of these people has their own story and coming from their own place. But were there any stories that struck you particularly harder than others? Or experiences photographing them that stand out?
For me, probably, I think the most moving experience was photographing the Kurdish family. I was working there one day, and I think part of what was so great about it was so unplanned. I was out there taking photographs, and these people were coming through. And into the parking lot walks in this family, and it's a Kurdish family that has just gotten here. And they had come to Catholic Charities to have their children registered for school. They had a counselor. So I did one of the full family, because I thought it'd be for them. And then I was able to do some individual shots of that. I think that meant the most. There's no distinction. These are all important. They all meant something. But in terms of the effect that it had on you, that was really the one that stayed with me for a long time. I love the group shot of the family because there's 3 boys and a father, and there's two sisters, and you can see their different personalities. One young woman is very, like she didn't want her photograph taken probably. The other one in the back is really eager to be seen. And then I did individual portraits of them, and they were so raw. I mean, they were just brand new, right? And, I remember looking at them and looking at these young women and thinking, gosh, this is going to tell us about ourselves. Like, what happens to these young women, whether they succeed or they fall through the cracks or something, tells us more about our society than anything else. And usually when you're doing these portraits, you're not really having these thoughts. You're too caught up in the mechanics of it, you're trying to make everything work. But that one I was very aware of. Like when I was making that photograph, I knew this was something really important, and even in the moment, which is rarely the case.
Yeah, you were capturing a really pivotal time in that person's life.
It certainly felt
not only
like
coming to a new country, but being of a young age, but old enough to know what's going on.
Yeah, and I could feel it. I could feel it when I was taking their photographs. I could feel it when I was making the negatives. I could feel it when I was making the prints. I was fully aware of that. And it makes all of this work worth it. Like some of this, a lot of this work was done when I had a full-time job, but I was like a part-time student. So I was pulling all-nighters over the weekends to get this work done. And sometimes you lose track of like why you're putting in all this work and what the purpose of this is. And that particular family and those particular portraits really made you feel like, oh, this is what this is all about. That's why you're doing all this work, because you could really see, I always refer to my photography in a way as a way of looking for America. That's my way of kind of phrasing it in my head, because as an immigrant, I've always I came here because I believed in what America stood for. I still do. I really do more than ever. And all of my photography, in some ways, is searching for America, finding my own America. And when I was doing these photographs, that's what it felt like. Like, this to me is America. That young woman, to me, is as American as things get. We're all a nation of refugees and all a nation of immigrants. And look at all the diversity in this culture and all the things that people have brought from that culture. And that's what it felt like when I was making those photographs.
My thanks to Zed for taking the time to discuss his work, and also to the University of Louisville Height Art Institute for lending us the space at their Masters of Fine Arts campus in the Portland neighborhood. You can learn more about Zed Saeed and the Catholic Charities Migration and Refugee Services at WHAS11.com.